Intellectual Property is proudly brought to you by Adams and Adams, rooted in 100 years of excellence in intellectual property law.
The internet has been around for a decade or so, and there's been quite a few ups and downs. With the advent of Web 2.0, more and more internet startups from South Africa have seen global success. Good evening, I'm Stefan Lamprecht, and you tune into the Intellectual Property Show. In the studio with me is Mike Stopforth, and we're talking about the way entrepreneurs are creating fortunes and failures on the internet. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, Stefan. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure. Mike, just to start off with, is the internet still going strong?
I guess you'd say so. It doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. In terms of the numbers of usage, it seems to be clocking around the billion number worldwide in terms of active internet users that we have. And in South Africa, with the advent of more affordable broadband connectivity, I think more and more people accessing the internet via their cell phones, it certainly is becoming more and more of a business reality, over and above just a great technological novelty for ordinary human beings.
It's moving beyond the hype phase and becoming a practical reality.
I'd hope so. And I think businesses recognize that for a long time. They've seen the opportunities in the internet, not necessarily being sure of which way to drive those opportunities, but have certainly been cognizant of it. Now it's a case of saying, all right, we've realized that there's an element of maturity to the web. How do we now leverage that for profitability?
When we talk about Web 2.0, what is Web 2.0?
Yeah, Stefan, it's all at once a helpful and an unhelpful term, Web 2.0 or 2.0. I think from a helpful perspective, it's necessary to understand that the web has changed. It's not the same platform that it was at the beginning. It's sort of evolved from a very static collection of advertising-like brochure pages, if you like, to a far more dialogue, interactive, oriented interface where people almost experience software within their browsers. So you have a full experience within your browser. It's not so much just drawing information or interacting with information, but having a full dialogue with the web. The unhelpful part is that there's a lot of buzz around it, and so many people call it a bit of bubble 2.0 or boom 2.0, expecting another dot-com crash that we had at the turn of the millennium.
Now, your business, Cerebro, what do you do? How do you fit into the Web 2.0 scenario?
Well, Cerebro has seen an opportunity to help businesses understand exactly the trends and technologies that make up Web 2.0, what those mean for ordinary human beings, so how it's affecting employees and customers, and how that changes business. Because at the end of the day, we really believe that the hype can do no good. Hype is only going to confuse people more and possibly get a lot of money spent in the wrong way. So what we want to do is get past the hype, get to the real value of Web 2.0 and say, clearly this is having an impact on the way people interact. If 750,000 people in South Africa use Facebook, something's going on. But what is it? What does it really mean? Or is it just fun and games?
Do we have real internet startup successes in South Africa?
Once again, I guess that depends on the definition of startup success. If you mean sites that get a lot of traffic worldwide, then yes, I guess we've got some startup successes. We haven't seen enormous, well, we've seen a few, but not an overwhelming number of enormous financial successes. But I think that pretty much speaks to the trend for most Web 2.0 sites. We see sites like Facebook or dig.com or youtube.com that are purchased by big media companies for enormous amounts of money. YouTube was bought for $1.65 billion by Google. There's a valuation of $15 billion on Facebook, and nobody really knows what that's for. So in South Africa, we have seen money invested in sites like Vinnie Lingham's Synthesite.com. We've seen Naspers Media Group invest in sites like blueworld.co.za, which is almost a local Facebook, if you like. And then also Mixit, the very popular social internet messaging application for cell phones.
So do you recognize a maturity coming in this whole approach to developing intellectual property in the internet domain, in terms of in the beginning very much focus on the hype, everything's going to be free for all, and now realizing but we need to create those valuations, we need to create a real tangible asset base. Is that taking place? Is it happening?
Well, there's a really there's a critical mass debate, I think, here. Most of these internet startups, it's very simple to start a business or start a site on the web today. You have a little bit of an idea, you collaborate with a developer or you develop it yourself, you get it going, you scale it, maybe get a couple of servers going, and then you start to get users because you offer some great free service. They can connect with their friends, or they can publish or build a blog or whatever it may be, publish their photos. And that's all fair and well, but then you get to a point where you've suddenly got masses of users. It's been very successful. You can't scale because you can't afford to add any more service, and you don't actually know how to charge people for the thing that you've been giving them for free for so long. Facebook can't very well now charge users $1 a month to use Facebook, although they probably could, and some people would still pay, but it's very difficult to go from the free model to a premium model. So what we have seen in terms of sites, Web 2.0 sites that have been successful, is what they've called a freemium model, if you like. It's a bit of a play on the word premium, but it begins free with limited functionality. And as you mature on the site and you use it more often, you get to a place where you need more functionality, and then you pay a price for premium functionality.
Now you talk about this business model for a Web 2.0 business. What I would recognize, and I'd like to get your take on this, is that obviously if you think about Facebook, if you think about Mixit, these are very strong brands that stand out. So there's an internet business, but the thing that draws the customers is the awareness of that brand.
Sure.
So if we talk about where you create that value, then obviously there's a big spin on the brand, and then secondly there needs to be a fundamental business, a revenue model if you want underneath.
I think this is the big problem, and I think that's what I'm speaking to. The brands in themselves are powerful only because of their word-of-mouth potency. I've often said the Web 2.0 is a little bit like word-of-mouth on steroids. Because it's digital, it's so much easier to spread a message, and it's so much easier to connect with people and to make those connections powerful. And that's what makes something like Facebook so powerful. It's not the software. The software isn't important.
Okay.
It's the network that uses the software. It's the network of human beings that interact with it. The problem is you've got these millions and millions of users, and in Mixit's case, millions of people. In many cases, the business model typically will be advertising. So they'll say, okay, well, we've got a bunch of eyes and a bunch of hands now. How do we interact with those people? And so we'll sell space to advertisers. But once again, that's not very scalable, is it? So at the end of the day, you have to find a way to provide a service that is unique and cutting edge and reliable enough so that, I guess, users will decide to pay for premium functionality.
And that comes back to building the brand and driving the brand value.
Absolutely, and making sure that whatever brand it is that you're building remains cutting edge when it's so easy to start a competitor on the web. We see a classic example at the moment is a website called Twitter, which is a very simple concept. It's what we call micro-publishing. People publish their life stream, if you like, and
I send an SMS to say what am I busy doing and so forth.
What am I doing right now in 140 characters or less.
Yeah.
Twitter starts up, massively popular, millions of users, can't scale, can't afford to scale, and is now suffering major functionality problems. So every time I go into Twitter, there's another feature that's down, and it's very disappointing for me. It's
just as a final question,
yes.
from an open source point of view, open source software.
Yes.
Do you see new maturity in terms of open source as a way to develop that level of asset base within the organization?
I think that's happened already. I think because of the obvious benefit of open source in terms of being software that people can use to build these applications without having to pay, open source in terms of the ethos of open source, beyond the actual property, the ethos and the practice of intellectual property sees collaborations and a swiftness of application build and startup that we haven't seen via proprietary means. And that's very exciting, I think. So I do see a maturity in that regard, and I do see margins being easier to make, provided people can service those open source platforms that they do build. From a corporate perspective, obviously you have to buy the talent that will then service those open source platforms, and that's where you spend money.
Thank you very much, Mike, for joining me in the studio tonight.
Thank you so much, Stefan.
There you have it, entrepreneurs and the knowledge economy driving big market successes in the global business of Web 2.0. Join me again next week to learn more about the world of intellectual property and innovation. Keep well and good night.
Intellectual Property was proudly brought to you by Adams & Adams, rooted in 100 years of excellence in intellectual property law.